Dream. Let's see. Test chat. Okay, hooray, chat's working. Let me see what else. We've got some stuff here. Nobody's around. That's okay. If nobody shows up, what do I do? If nobody shows up, then I guess I get started on my own. It's a study group, you study. So coding interview, good. But if there's nobody to talk to, maybe I just jump into. Oh, hey, somebody's here. Hello. Thank you. Um, so yes, excellent. Um, so why don't you tell? Yes, hi. What? Tell me now. Did you find me through Daniil? Are you a boot camp student at what you call it? What was it? Brain Station. Were you at Brain Station with Daniil, or how did you find? I know that we met on LinkedIn for sure. Let me see. I'll keep an eye out for that. And yeah, through Daniil, CS. Oh, you do have a CS degree. So you went into the Brain Station to get. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it. Um, now, have you have you considered, are you trying to get all the way to FAANG, or are you working already, or what's your personal situation in terms of um, just in terms of like what you're hoping to get out of this? So let's get back down to this is the week 0 discussion. I should talk about, I should move goals. Working already, started as a front end back in 2015, moved to QA automation, amazing. Um, moved to Canada, switched to dev, full stack ever since last year. So QA automation. So you were writing unit tests. Was that Selenium or was it like an N unit or something like that? And are you planning on going back to California? And okay, Python and Selenium. And are you planning on going back to California or sticking around in Canada or oh, I can't move it here. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Move permanently. And now are you trying to get like are you targeting Amazon or like Uber or you don't know or just anything better? Um, what is your I think one of the questions that I find myself having to ask is with I mean you can see there are pictures on the wall. Those are my son. He just came down to say goodnight. Um, and if you think about if you do your research on the workplace culture at a Facebook, for example, it's very high pressure and or at least from the people who talk about it publicly. Oh, hello. Hi, Glenn. Um, so we're talking to Rajat right now, and we're discussing the implications and the goals for what we're trying to achieve. So, um, are we just trying to become better developers overall, or are we trying to literally, quite literally, target one of the big tech, um, sort of very type A places to work, which have very high performance standards? I think Facebook has a performance review every 6 months. Web engineer, front end focus. Yeah, just yeah, and not be scared of tech interviews. So yeah, it really is sort of. I mean, I frame it as trying to get FAANG interview good, but in reality, it's more about if you're good enough to do the FAANG interviews, which are the hardest in the world in theory, then everything else is just candy, right? It's just you should be able to just walk in and blow their socks off. So, I mean, it's good to understand that. But yeah, basically any interview, if you can do that. Now, I think, Glenn, you are more interested in the professional development side in terms of getting better at programming or um, possibly knowing what to expect from the process. Um, and so, but you can confirm I'm not here to speak for you. Um, Now, let's see. Let me see if I can get another window going over here. Pull this one down here. Yeah, okay. So I set out a few things. I want to just check the Twitch. Um, oh, Josh, hello. Uh, Excellent. Yeah, and I
Right.
think that's a really fair, Glenn, that's a really
Because it's not
fair,
even a thing. Like
um,
it's
a fair way to look at it. Like, start out by trying to figure out what you're even interested in, and then move into the idea of like, once you know what you can start setting targets and goals. And that is going there, and here we go. So excellent. There's actually a good crew, but I'm not going to call out anybody who isn't speaking because that's rude. If you just want to lurk, you don't want to be named. Um, so I think the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of what we're going to do at a very high level, there was this article here on codinginterview.com that lays out um, the 13-week course plus a behavioral interview thing. So I'm calling it 14 weeks overall. Um, I don't know what I want to do next, but I do know I want to build my modern web skills. Yeah, exactly, and have as many options open as possible. Yeah, so it's exactly sort of like, you know, the things that I'm seeing right away, and as a new father, the top tier big tech, as I've said, is really it has really high performance standards and really high performance requirements. And if you're interested in making sure that you still have time for a work-life balance, then that might not be the right place. And so you've got to you've got to research each of the individual places um, that you might target. And I have to silence my phone um, so that this is doop 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 doo. Okay, that's silent. Um, so yeah, you have to research each of the individual places to make sure that their work-life balance profile matches what you're interested in. But if you look at something like codinginterview.com, all of these big ones here are very similar in structure. Um, and we can actually open a few of them. Let's do Amazon, Google. GitHub is actually quite a bit friendlier, you know. And so we look at Amazon, they've got themselves a um, let's see, read about the process. They have this site's really nice because it has infographics for the sort of unique features of each of the company's interviews, and it lays out what you can expect. I think this is, I think support. I'm not right. Yeah, significant growth opportunity. Yeah, yeah. So targeting places. I was talking with another colleague of ours today about this one place that's looking and saying, "Oh, could they be a tech unicorn?" This kind of thing where um, they're so early in their growth, but they if they have a uh, path to an IPO, so you know you get a few options at start. Maybe you get options like $100,000 that vest over 3 or 4 years. And so you have those and you know that they're on this track to an IPO and they become a $1 billion thing and they grow 10 times. So you've got yourself an extra $1 million over the 4 years that you've been there. So some of the things to consider about the place that you're looking at is what is the ownership structure? Um, is it already wholly owned by another mega corporation, or is it um, something where equity will make a difference? Um, I think one of the things to consider is don't let equity take more precedence than your base salary because the equity could be, it could be worth a lot or it could be worth zero if they never launch or if they never make that IPO or um, you can get diluted. If the executives say, "Oh, we're not gonna dilute these executive class shares, but the sort of other shares are going to get diluted," then you're suddenly 100,000 is only worth 10,000, but all of them make money. Um, so in terms of one of the let's go up and look at sort of the main goals for week 0. Um, if we maybe I back up a little bit more. So we'll start here at the roadmap and look at um, the this is a good document to read. And, Um, so picking a programming language and sticking with it is important in terms of doing the code interview because the way these generally work is you have a quick phone call with a recruiter, an internal recruiter for the company. You then will possibly have a short session, a short 45-minute session via a Zoom meeting or some sort of shared coding environment where you solve an algorithm problem, something like, um, you know, uh, reverse this, reverse or write a function that tests to see if any given word is a palindrome. And you're expected to solve something like that, these brain teaser type functions, within 45 minutes while you are talking about your thought process in solving this code problem with somebody who is evaluating you. And that's typically done over Zoom on a shared programming environment. I believe something like CoderPad is CoderPad interview. Um, so it's sort of like this programming whiteboard. can I do free trial? Oh no. Anyways, um, it's basically it's basically a collaborative version of Visual Studio Code online. And so you're as you write the interview, they see the code and you talk about it going back and forth. Um, and so this person's interview roadmap says because you're going to have to be coding, pick one language and stick to it. If you already know a language that you're good at, then it's probably fine to stick with that. I, for example, am going to try to stick with C sharp, but if you are um, trying to plan for the place that you want to be, and oh, and here's the other thing here. He says, don't try switching in the middle of an interview. Um, Back to the full interview process. After you pass that one on one or the two on one type 45-minute interview and you're successful, they're going to call you back for a what is effectively a full day assessment with up to 5 people. You might have 5 of those 45-minute code interviews where each of them asks you to solve a different problem. Um, they have a behavioral component, so it would maybe be 3 or 4 code problems, and then one about why do you want to work with us? What is one time that your work had an impact, and how did you quantify that impact that you had? Something like, um, so you state what is the problem that I had, what is the solution that I implemented, and how did that affect um, the bottom line of the company? Um, but you can read this document yourself as well, and it's important that you do get your head around what's going on here. And then so back to the question of selecting a language for yourself, you want to take a moment to think about what languages are your target companies using in production. So, um, if you are interested in Amazon, there's like Java, Ruby, Python, C. Then you go to Google. And what I was thinking we could do to get, and so now you've got Java, C, Python, and Golang. Um, you go to GitHub, and this one's basically just Ruby as far as I can recall. So then it's Ruby. Um, and so the thing that you would want to do is think about where you want to end up. So Objective-C, this is probably the logo for Swift. You've got Ruby, Java, C, and so you want to spend time thinking about which languages are used where. And so Swift, JavaScript, Java, C sharp. Um, which languages are used where? And if you are going to learn a specific language, um, which one has the most overlap amongst the places that you might be targeting? So if we were looking at just this set right here, I think Java and C++ are appearing on every page. So if you're going to work towards, well, not every page, there's Ruby. Okay. C++ and Java. And over here, you've got Java and C++. Um, but again, that isn't necessarily the most important part of the decision. And so I think picking something that you are comfortable in is a choice that each of us is going to have to make on our own. Um, I think we've talked a little bit about the workplace culture that we've got going on. Um, and we want to talk about the life that we want to have, figure out. So there were a few other people. Does anybody else have some insight into what we're actually trying to achieve? What you're actually trying to achieve? What are your goals? Um, I think from my perspective, I can say that I am definitely just really, I want to be able to walk into any one of these interviews and nail them. I don't know that it necessarily has to be FAANG, but so benefits of choosing the language that you already know. Where are the advantages? Okay. Technical interviews will require this one was really important. It came out of, um, if I go back to this, the syllabus. So there was uh, a video here. Open a new tab. Um, now, this
My goal
guy.
here is I want to equip you guys with the secret to landing in tech. I've interviewed with Google, I've interviewed with LinkedIn, I've interviewed with Uber, Airbnb, and as you know, I'm currently at Amazon. Most of these companies differ slightly when it comes to their core values and leadership. From Uber to LinkedIn to Google, they're all different. But there's a couple unifying things that they care about. One of those things that they care about is impact. And they care about how you illustrate impact with data. And I'm gonna get into that more as I go through the slides. A lot of people think that landing at a tech company requires being smarter than someone else, right? Requires a better education, a higher GPA, but really it just comes down to hard ass work. That's the only thing. Because the ingredients are available. I'll show you where the ingredients are available. If you put in the time, you put in the effort, there's a very strong percentage of you who will have a chance of getting into one of these companies. So in the talk, I'm going to be going over a combination of practical ingredients that when mixed together will give you success. These steps include foundational elements like the resume. I was just at one of the resume review sessions earlier this morning helping students with that. We're going to be going over outreach to employers and some tactics that I've used to grab recruiters' attention and get offers within 24 hours. And then also I'm going to be talking about crushing interviews. So why big tech? A lot of people think that they want to work in big tech for the reputation and money. And that's absolutely true. There's a ton of brand equity from these companies that that other companies
Too
will try to
fast?
poach you
Sorry.
once you're already in
I mean,
this system of
let
top
me,
tech. Now, one of the other things that comes along with resume prestige and working at these top tech companies is that if you have a decision to work at a small company, you don't have nearly the amount of upward opportunity and upward mobility, right? There may be one senior engineer at a small organization, and when you're at Amazon, you can switch teams in 30 days. You're not getting the traction. You can go to another team, you can try another role, and these companies allow you to kind of have that flow and find the things that you're really interested in and grow where you want to grow. And that's very difficult at small organizations. Now, from an engineering standpoint, here are some of the salaries. You're looking at Microsoft starting engineering, 159K.
so I'm going to pause it right. Yeah, so this guy's got levels.fyi. I'm going to pull this one up. This is one of the things that I wanted to take a peek at so that we can get an idea of yeah, so all of the information that I'm working on. So um I can actually add to actually so Rajat, this levels.fyi has US salaries. However, you can actually look by location, and we can go down and we can look at Toronto, Canada. But this is intended to be a Toronto-based study group, but because these links exist out in the wild, anybody who's watching this can get get their hands on this and go in on their own. So we've got in Toronto, the current median salary is 156. But if you look at that, most are making 129,000 with a $20,000 bonus, probably performance based. And then there is the annual stock grant that we were talking about right off the bat. So the next, and you see that there's a big cluster here, and there's all of this. So The really interesting thing, actually, Wish is a really nice target, by the way, from what I understand. And actually it lists right here. So one of the nice things about this guy is you can, if you click on the individual thing, there was something that was really useful around here, and I'll have to apologize because I can't find the graphs. There was one that had really great overlap graphs for all of the different levels. Um, Sorry, Love Pebs, I had started answering you and I got distracted. So if you go onto the FAANG Interview preparation course repo, I'll paste this into chat. In fact, I'll just paste, yeah, why don't I paste the link that I'm working from here? I can paste this into chat and you should be able to click on it and read it yourself. Um, So yeah, we have the link to the coding interview, the interview roadmap, um, some other courses that I was gathering before I decided to just write my own. Here's that video that I just clicked on and some highlights notes. So, we were getting to the point where he says, talk about, um, in fact, you guys, you can all just you can watch this first video yourself. Um, Various hiring guides, leadership principles comes up, learn the values of your targeted company. Um, thank you. Thank you. Um, Now back to levels FYI, which is really interesting. Um, I'm trying to find, I spent hours on this the other day and they had, this is location directory, salaries, explore more locations. Why is this so hard? Um, Maybe if I click on this, so I click on Google, view data points, add your salary range. So search cities, tag, no, Amazon. Let's go look at Amazon. It was, I did not realize that it would be so hard to find the graphs, visualizations maybe. There we go. This is the guy that I'm looking for. So let's, and then we can filter this by location, can we? Maybe not. So here's Amazon. Ah, yes. And so each of the dots you can actually see where it is. And so here's one in Toronto. Um, an L4 is getting a base of 118K, 4,000 in stock per year, and a bonus of 30,000 with 2 years of experience. So you've got to think about what you're on now and see how close to that you are. Um, the base doesn't seem too bad, but the grants are where these differences really come into play. And can we find a Toronto in this one? Yeah, not great. Uber. Now, so one of the things I know about Uber is they are planning on hiring about 50 new engineers before the end of the year. So, um, Uber is a really great option for targeting right now in terms of your. So here you go. And look at this. So this is a Toronto salary with 5 years experience. Uh, that's a seems like a low base, but a super good stock grant. Um, who else do we have? Any more Torontos in there? But and then, I mean, the other thing is if you are really just chasing the dollar, then you kind of have to go to uh, you kind of have to go to the States, unless unless people all start jumping from company to company. And oh, and Snap is in Toronto as well. I don't know if they have, but the site is very useful. I had to upload an actual offer before I could um before I could get into the full details of everything. So I feel like it's probably pretty well validated. Like, look at this. Look at this. 140K. Do we have one in Toronto though? I don't know if Toronto is in Twitter stuff. Groupon. That's strange. That must be an old salary. Um, but back to specifically Toronto salaries. You go back over here by location down to Toronto, and you say, so here are a few that are probably really good choices to look at. Um, who else scribed into it? Can I sort by company here? No. So here, this is fun. We have some that are RBC and TELUS. Broadcom, I've never heard of. Viva, they're just down the just down the road from here. Last I checked, they were right downtown. Um, so, but you can see, I don't know what the rest of you think, but I think one of the things that's happening right now is coming out of the pandemic, um, and having had a year of everyone working remotely everywhere, companies are starting to say, oh, maybe we really can be productive and not be focused exclusively in the Silicon Valley. And paying somebody in Toronto, 176,000 probably feels like a hell of a discount for them. And they're coming in thinking it's like a deal. And the big companies are coming in thinking that we're getting paid like a deal. And it's potentially destabilizing the salary market in Toronto in our favor as individual contributors and earlier stage workers. So this is what. Oh, yeah, I got an email today from Facebook saying that they have fully remote positions in Canada now. Um, so I think this is what's going on here is all of those validated Toronto salaries, these ones on this low end are probably from pre-pandemic. Yeah, that's e- e- exactly, and that's exactly right. That these pre-pandemic, they're saying, "Oh, we're just sitting around and everything's hunky dory. Canadians are cheap." But then, I don't know if you can drill into. Yeah, you can't actually drill into which these exact offers are, but that's sort of the 25 entries. How about 7 entries at 300K plus? Um, and so that's part of it. One of the things that I've been doing recently is I've been replying to, and you know how many recruiters reach out on LinkedIn. So I've been replying to all of them, Yelp, Square, Dropbox, yeah, and they're all coming to, and so they're opening offices and are full. Okay, I understand, or full remote. So I've been replying to the recruiters and saying I'm interested in talking to you, but because of the amount of effort that goes into talking about an opportunity, I would like to know before we begin what the budget is, what the salary range or the compensation budget is for this role. And quite often, they'll either quote 120, 120, 110, it'll go from 100 to 120. But quite often I'm seeing 150s. I'm seeing 150 plus bonus. I'm seeing 160s. I'm seeing 180s. I had a written offer in my hand. It fell through, but I had one in hand at 180 just last month. Um, and so I think what one of the things it was incredible until it fell through. But I think one of the things that will help us overall is if we do start openly discussing compensation with the recruiters who reach out. And we should pay attention to them because it's it's the only, I mean, they have an incentive for us to know, right? And if we reach out or if we reply to their reaching out, if they're reaching out, it's because they think they can sell us to somebody, right? So they can move, they think that if we're ready to move, that they can take their commission, which is, I think, 10 grand or 20 grand or something like that. So they get a very good payday if we decide to move. So if instead of ignoring them and sort of smirking about how wonderful it is that a recruiter wants to speak to you and how good that feels and sort of having that moment of pride in being wanted, if we say, how much? And when we say how much, then we can say, I'm already on more than that. Thank you for reaching out. Or we can say, that's, you know, that's in the ballpark that I'm interested in. And if they're flexible, maybe I'll talk to them. But it would have to be this much more than that for me to be interested in leaving where I am right now. Right. Um, so that's one of the things that I've been doing. And that's how I've been finding out what the market is going for. Um, I haven't been, and so one of the things that I also find happens quite frequently in the dance of talking to recruiters about things, they will say, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, well, what are you on now?" And you say, "Well, I don't need to tell you that. That's not relevant. The question is not what am I making now? The question is you know, what will it take to make me leave?" And so um, those those discussions are free market research that is being paid for by the recruiter because they already know what the budget is, and you can get a sense of how many. You can just get a really good sense of how close to par you really are right now. Um, and I think back to Josh's point, if you start seeing things that are 20% are regularly 20% higher than what you're on right now, then you can say, listen, I don't want to leave, but I'm having a really hard time justifying the cost of staying. Can we talk about a compensation boost? Um, and sometimes that will happen, but oftentimes salaries for existing employees are planned a year in advance. And so when it comes time for you to be getting your raise, you kind of psych yourself up to go into the um, and this is all something that I got out of a podcast last night, and I have one of the links, so I will share that. But um, you psych yourself up to go into this salary negotiation. You think if I just sit down with my manager and I prove my case strongly enough and, you know, say the right thing, they will give me my 10% raise, my 20% raise, the amount that I want. But in reality, in many places, your manager does not even have the power to determine that because you are a line in a spreadsheet that is determined in the accounting department, and they just they just start at the top of the sheet and they go point zero 0.03 multiplied by, and they paste it down. And if you want to get your out of band raise, then that's got to go through an entire bureaucracy of people who are at the very end of the line paid to say no. So 10% raise on a salary range set 5 years is, yes, exactly. And that's exactly what's going on. If you are at the same, and yeah, and 10%, but we all know that these raises that we get as existing employees are much closer to between 3 and 5%, maybe 8% if you're out of, if you're out of this world, but 10% just doesn't happen, um, typically. And so the only route to get to, and I think large companies bank on or bet on the fact that it's a lot of work to find a new job. It's like, look at this. This is a 14-week course where every week we're going to be, you know, doing algorithm problems. We're going to be doing homework. We're going to be doing reading. There is so much work that goes into just getting ready for the code interview. Then there's further work in finding somebody who will shop you out or like to getting the introduction to the hiring manager and stuff. It's a very hot market right now, so that is not really the worst problem that we're facing. I think it's really the work. Um, so, but if we're looking at it from those lenses, the only way that you're getting 10% or better is by going to a new company where perhaps you're not already typecast into a role. If we think about the developer who came in a bit junior, they got really good at doing this one thing, this one way, but the return on investment, even though they're very good at, say, drafting emails, for example, um, they're really good at drafting these emails, and but the email, even if they do 10 emails a day, well, I don't know who I might have been referring to in that case, but if they're really good at drafting emails, what we would see is, you know, even if you do 3 a day, you're still only generating 32 grand, right? Or like maybe 48 grand, maybe it's 50 grand. And um, it's just there's no way that your salary and whatever pays for that. But there becomes this disincentive to move people out of the role that they're super good at because suddenly it's more expensive, so that becomes less profitable. And so, you know, it makes sense in some companies to speak about the incredible growth opportunities, but to slow walk the actual implementation of those opportunities. And that's kind of the piece that we have to pay attention to. Um, and back to the fundamental thesis that the only way that you are going to achieve market is probably by jumping to a different company. And one of the things that we see people in Silicon Valley doing is they jump as often as every 2 to 3 years. Whereas I, for example, have been in my current position for 10 years. And if I had been doing 2 years at a time and getting 10 to 20% raises versus 10 years where you're getting an average of about 3% a year, it doesn't take a mathematical genius to know who's coming out ahead. And so I think one of the things that newer developers who have who have interest in not making the same mistakes that I did, um, consider increasing their value of moving to a new place, learning these new things, seeking out those larger raises sooner. Um, because the things that you've learned are valuable and they are likely more valuable to someone else where they don't have to do any training and you're coming up out on day one fully up to speed than the company that says, "Well, I'm already paying you this. Why would I pay you more? You could just sit there and, have an easy life and not change anything." Right? And so I think there's a really strong case. And remember, these businesses say that they're families, but they are not families. They are an agreement to exchange your time in return for money. And that's why we go to work for someone else. Now, it's really nice to find 1.3 starting salary versus 2.5 after 10. Right, exactly. Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I Okay, stream's over, guys. I'm gonna cry. No, it's fine. It's fine, and it's part of the reason that I'm doing this effort and trying to no, no, don't worry. I am fully aware. I am fully aware. I, you know, I, yeah, I should have jumped a long time ago. Things will be fine. And you know what? So I was lazy and I let some of my code skills atrophy a little, and that's why doing something like this is really good. Mm, I think one of the things that I have noticed is the title change raises have been very much out of band, and so they are closer to 10 to 15 regularly when you're getting your um, senior to full stack to technical architect and whatever the order is. Those ones are definitely more closely mapped onto what I would call sort of uh, market rate opportunities for raises. I am not convinced that you wouldn't still make, as we say, the 2.5 times by jumping and jumping and jumping. Because, um, right, if you think about the scaling for the business, somebody who gets an expert in the exact thing that they're trying to do right now may make many multiples more on the same type of work in the same hours. So um, if we are looking at an a consultancy type business where the hours the business earn are will or sorry the money the business earns scales linearly with the hours the individual employees work. So if you are a consultancy and you work 6 hours, the business works 6 hours times your rate of pay, and you just and if you have two and if you do 12 hours, that's 12 hours times the rate of pay, and it just goes up in a straight line. The more hours worked, the more income. But now if we go and we think about something like a product company, if you think about an Uber or a Instacart, Wish, Okta, anyways, and Amazon. Amazon, for example, has a global footprint. And so one engineer, one engineer's hour of work can be multiplied not by a single multiplier of their rate of pay, but it can be multiplied by the total user base of Amazon, which is closer to billions of people. And so um, if you think about scaling, if you think about scale, if you think about the ability to reach a large number of customers, 1 hour of developer time that increases by 1% or 2% or even a tenth of a percent conversion rate will suddenly scale up by tens of thousands of dollars instead of just that single linear increase. And so the value of your time to these companies that are making so much more and they make their money exponentially on the hours worked is much higher. And so that's why your skill set may be more highly valued by somebody who makes more for selling that same product. So um, the idea that jumping around is it's not about disloyalty or anything. Now there are costs to jumping that are not financial. Um, uh, you will lose your daily interaction with a likely very good group of friends. And so that can feel like a loss. But one of the things that happens with the people that you want to stay in touch with, typically you do. So, and then you get to make new friends. Um, Now, there could also be workplace culture differences, right? And so if the workplace culture is very enjoyable, it's really easy, or it's easy, or maybe you have something external to working that is currently very important to you. There are a number of good reasons to stay as well. I mean, for example, when my son was born, I had no desire to, I just wanted to like turn the hand crank and print the money. I did not want to do anything other than focus on taking care of him. Um, Now with daycare, taking care of him does mean money. So and this is about the self-reflection. This is what we're talking about in terms of why are you here and what are you doing? What is your goal in terms of why you've started on this journey, and how do you think you might uh, implement that stuff? So, and you know, there's no question there's incredible prestige once you have, quite realistically, any one of these um, globally known companies becomes and especially in big tech, when it's a globally known engineering company, then that can open doors to going to other places. Much better developer becomes senior and not be afraid of the type of any type. Yeah. Keep avoiding. Yep. Keep avoiding practicing. Help stay motivated. Yeah. And that's right. And so we can, if we see cool opportunities coming up, we can share. If it does get more people over time, uh, then maybe we can start inviting companies to come along and pitch us, right? If there are companies that maybe they're not the FAANG companies, like one of the ones that I posted on my LinkedIn the other day, I said who in my network is hiring, and one of the companies that came along and said, "Oh, us," was a place called Touch Bistro. And so, they're hiring. We know that it's hard for companies right now to find developers. And so one of the things we could do if we were I would some form of critical mass of developers, we could invite the hiring managers to come in and we would do sort of an side by side interview where I could ask some questions or you could ask questions and we could sort of grill them on what it's like working at their company. But in so doing, they would answer the questions for us, and maybe some of us would say that sounds like something that's appealing to me. And so I think there's a lot of value, right? There's a lot of value in something like that, in having a form of critical mass of we are we're a community of passionate, hardworking developers who are working hard on our continuous professional development. And, you know, on average, we are the type of people that you are currently trying to hire. So come pay attention, right? And that will, yeah, I want to be passionate too. Compensation, right? Yeah. And it really is like you've got to um, balance the passion against the compensation. If the compensation is that far below the market, is it really like you'd be a little, anyways. So, and then learn the new developer to work on smaller agile. Yeah. And the modern stuff, there's so much modern stuff out there. And it's really hard in an established consultancy model to introduce new tech, especially when you're working in such a conservative industry that they're saying, well, let's pick these enterprise techs and technologies and force them on you. So, and there are a lot of those places. There are a lot of those places. Um, and I keep finding them. I keep talking to them. Um, so video content, this guy tech lead, I honestly, he seems toxic, but I can't tell if he's joking. I feel like I might have to. Oh, here's Glenn. I think I'm going to learn back end, but I don't really know what that means. Yeah, exactly. Um, so that actually, Glenn, I think this is going to be one of the things for you that is so, so valuable because this is really a touchy-feely week, but let's go back to the schedule of the roadmap. Um, brush up on the basics of your programming language. I'm going to skip that now because we're going to talk about it next week. But this is where things get really intense. And it's kind of why I'm starting slow because this is where it gets pretty um, and just incredibly computer science heavy. Um, we're talking about data structures, we're talking about algorithms in general. And then one of the things that we will do is I will open this right now. I'll go to Elite Code. There are a number of these. There are a number of these things. There's like Hacker Rank. Hacker Rank is one of them. It's very good. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the languages are the same. That's the thing. Actually, maybe oh geez, LinkedIn is supposed to be really good for work-life balance and they pay well. So let me see. For developers, log in. I can log in with Google. Oh, I should switch to my GitHub there. Um, because I view certificates. I'm a professional. Oh, go away. 10 plus years. Submit. Okay. Problem solving basic. Ah, ooh, I have a link. Maybe this one is good. So let's look at interview preparation. Maybe I will do this. So I'll go. So you would go to an algorithm. You go to algorithms. You would say, so here's an easy compare the triplets. And this has a success rate of 94.94%. So it's basically math class. Well, not math, it's programming class, but it's so you would say Alice and Bob each created one problem. Reviewer rates awarding points from a scale. Okay. The rating for is a tuple is a triplet. The rating for Bob's challenge is a triplet. If the task is to find the comparison points comparing A0 with B0, A1 with B1, A2 with B2, right? So it's basic. I mean, so the first part is you read the problem, like what is the problem statement? What am I trying to solve? And then if we scroll through, um, and it tells you, so this is the sample input. So if I send you 5, 6, 7, 3, 6, 10, then the sample output is 1, 1. And, you know, 7, 17, 28, 30. And then um, change theme, run code. So let me run this one, see what happens. I should go to one that I've actually, compilation error. This is why I don't use HackerRank. Node.js is a good choice. In fact, a very good choice. So solve me first. Let's look at one that I've actually already solved on HackerRank, so you can see. Complete the function, solve me first. Well, and Glenn, actually, if we go back to that list of eventual targets, you know, Netflix is virtually pure JavaScript in a lot of places. Like Netflix is JavaScript everywhere, they say. Um, the other interesting thing about that is once you get better at Node.js, you can move into TypeScript, which I'm going to load it up on another screen here. CoderPad, that's good. Load it up, make sure I don't load something bad. But what would we do? We would go TypeScript developer survey. Um, Here we go. This might be the one that I was looking for. The if you use Angular, force you use TypeScript as well. React also, yeah. Um, there was there was a big headline I read the other day about TypeScript, which said that here we go. After consistent rise over the last, Python fell from second to third as the most loved technology, being beat out by TypeScript at second, and Rust Rust got, I really wonder, how does Rust get so much love from Stack Overflow users? Um, but one of the things that I did read about TypeScript that was going on is that it was starting to increase in salary. So what they do in some of these surveys somewhere is they gather what language do you work in, how much do you make, and they plot these all on a graph. And I think the headline that I read said that while C sharp is currently falling in overall salary relative to everyone else, I mean, you're probably not going down, but anyways, TypeScript is actually going up. So if you were going to be starting on learning something, uh, starting on Node.js and then using that to pivot into a TypeScript would be a good long-term plan. And back to this, oh, I get a gold badge if I just get 313 more points. Um, Back to the solving games on uh, Hacker Rank or Leet Code. They're both popular, so it really doesn't matter. I found this one once I started it was a bit more um, user friendly in some ways, but I've done quite a bit over here. So complete the function solve to compute the sum. So for the sample input, A equals 2, B equals 3, this is question one is just add these two numbers, right? And that's so I go to my submissions and we can see what I did. So view results. So what it does, solve me first, A, B, return A plus B. And so you have the test cases. Um, I wonder, so if I copy this, so I would take that, I would go back over to the problem. So you paste your response over there and you go submit code. Is this going to work? Either worse. That's why I hate HackerRank. I haven't done this in too long. But let's find one here. Problems. Don't. So when I started this, I decided to sort everything by the hardest. And so I started with the very hardest one that they have. I have since learned that you're better off. I think you had to change the language to. Oh, is that? Thank you. Let me see. That makes yes. Um, that is probably going to be. Was I writing in, is this JavaScript? This looks very JavaScript to me. So let's run code and see if it works. That does look like JavaScript. Wrong answer. Anyways, so you write your code, you run the code, you get your answer, and if you submit the response 6 years ago, I did this 6 years ago. If you submit, oh, it is JavaScript right there. If you submit the response and all of your test cases pass, you you get the badge for the you get the points for doing the solution. So this was a 1 point solution. Go back to warm up. Max score 10. Time conversion. So anyway, so from the long story short on these coding sites is, wait, why are all these locked? I guess I have to pay for the advanced version. So this one I actually tend to like a little more, um, just because you just have to focus on writing the one function and you don't have to worry about um, all of this read line stuff. It makes it a little more little more complex and dense to deal with. But so some of the advantages of HackerRank is they have a large selection of languages versus LeetCode, who they also, and actually they have more languages. So who am I to who am I to judge? You could do your TypeScript in here. Is this make this a little wider? Um, so there you go. You've got the option of TypeScript. You have basic JavaScript. So what's that? So if your input is 1, 2, 3, and 4, the output is 1, 3, 6, and 10, which is the sum of 1 plus 2, right? 1, because yeah, there you go. So, and once you write, so let me go to one of the ones that I've done here. They will show you, so what do? I go problems, I go status, difficulty, sort by acceptance. There we go. So if I go to something like this strong password checker, which I wrote the other day, it was really hard. It took me overnight. I had to sleep in the middle. Um, but I got it. There's just a lot of edge cases. If you look at something like the submissions, um, and I really like this about this one too, is it tracks. So if we look at this one, it says, oh, there are 51 test cases. You got 49 of them, but this is the test case that you're currently failing. So it's um, one of one of the things that you have to learn while you're doing these is um, to think ahead to the things that could go wrong and sort of try and test and build around that. Um, so there's a lot of value to doing these, and I think that again back to Glenn's first statement there was what's the what's the way to become less afraid of doing back end code is probably to hop into one of these gamified platforms where you get points and cred for filling in the questions. Now, the nice thing is these things are specifically intended as recruiting websites too. So if you start getting your badges in these websites, some companies recognize your hacker rank and will reach out to you based on your score. So if you are not looking now, but you are interested at some point in, you know, there you go. So there's like Mozilla recognizes work in hacker rank. I think you would probably still have to write your evaluation. You would still have to write a coding interview. People reach out to me a lot. Um, Probably not as I I hear once you get to places that are um a little bigger in terms of their prestige, it happens multiple times a day, but I certainly get a few a week. And that was why at one point I just started saying, well, tell me how much is this one paying? And that was that was how I wound up going for that offer that wound up giving me from these hackers. I think what happens is the hacker developer sites sell your email to the recruiters directly, and the recruiters just say, I found your email somewhere, or I liked your profile, and they don't really go into detail about how they got directly in touch with you, but it's important to know that if you're signing up for one of these things, you're specifically doing it for professional development. And so it makes it pretty appropriate that a highly qualified lead like a recruiter who is trying to say, I've got this $150,000 job, I've got this $200,000 job. Do you want it? You know, recruiters are just people who want to give you money, right? So it's seems like an okay thing. It isn't really harassment. It's, can I give you money? Um, and these certifications, this is new. I don't know that I had certificates before, but we should tell. Oh, these are really exciting. Maybe I will come back to Hacker Rank because I think this one, I can go view my certificate and you can add your Hacker Rank to your LinkedIn profile. Oh, no, I wanted it pre-filled. That's what I wanted. I just wanted it to, I just want it to work. Copy link. Oh, wait a second. Copy link. Can I copy the link? Well, whatever. I don't have to do that on stream, do I? But it's just companies use these types of platforms for their interview. Yes, so getting comfortable. Yeah, and that's a really good point too, Pebs, is I think one of my coding interview proposals said that we would actually do it on Hacker Rank as a pair programming exercise. So um, if you do know how to do this, then you are, and if you are comfortable with it, then when it comes time to go to the coding interviews, you will be in good shape for doing this. Um, and even if you are not doing it on Hacker Rank specifically or Leet Code specifically. That other one that I found was CoderPad. Um, CoderPad interviewing software. Um, get started for candidates. We'll see if there's any. So it's like, it's the same sort of thing. It's you have the uh, call button. There are two people connected at the same time, and that all goes together. And so what you if you are up to speed on this, if you're comfortable working with this, then that's another way to be less afraid of the coding interviews themselves. And that's that. It would be nice if this CoderPad one had a um, hacker rank style um, challenge system so that we could just get our feet wet in this specific environment. But, you know, life is as it is, and that doesn't happen. So back to the things, the code challenges. I'm actually probably planning on doing a couple of hours, a couple of nights a week on these. So going to be starting, I'm probably going to be starting this week. I actually had a bit of cool news about a certain tech company that I'd be interested in working for has reached out, and so I'm gonna start trying to practice. I might be getting my coding interview a little sooner than I originally expected, so that would be cool. Um, so what else are we here for? Let's go back to the learning objectives that I've put out to make sure that I'm getting everywhere. Codify a set of goals, right? This is each of us are interested have to each of us have to come to terms with figuring out our own goals. Um, figure out our motivations. I think we probably come to terms with that to some extent. Uh, you know, let me see. Oh, so back to so this thing right here where he talks about how to get a job at Microsoft, Amazon, Google. One of the things that he says, and I saw this, so I did an Amazon interview a few years ago, and oh, it wasn't a gotcha. It was, if I had prepared better, I would have known to expect this question. But it was solve something like this. It was, solve the algorithm. And I got the algorithm, or it was close. It was on a whiteboard, so we didn't know for sure, but he generally said, "Yeah, that seems like it probably works. We're not too worried about the exact thing." But he pointed to something in C sharp that I was doing, something like um, I was doing something like a link query on a for each, which is, I was just using a loop in a certain way. And the interviewer said, "Do you know what effect that loop style?" So, for context, it would be like I was using, if we were doing JavaScript, there are two ways of writing a writing a loop that iterates through all elements, right? So I can do this in JavaScript. I'd say let um, let x equal 1 comma 2 comma 3. Okay, and so one of the ways that I can get through this loop is I can say for I equals 0, I is less than x dot length I plus plus, and wrong one, and I would say console dot log um, x at I. Okay, so that's a pretty straightforward way of iterating through a loop. But there is another way of iterating through a loop where we pass a function into, so I would say x dot for each. Then I might do an arrow function here where it is data, D for data. So I would say, and then I would say console.log D. Okay. So both of these achieve the same goal, but they're done in different ways. And you might have you might have a question that comes up from your interviewer that is, how is the performance of the dot for each different than the classic for loop? Is one of them faster than the other? Does one of them allocate memory in a different way? And so back to the note, why you would know your syntax of your language. There was something where he said, get to know the memory profile. Could have, oh, right. Know how memory management works for the language that you choose. Know the common libraries that you might use. Um, One of the things that they say is, when you are in one of these interviews, if it might be okay to like Google and search up your answers, but in a 45-minute interview, you maybe would rather spend your time solving the algorithmic problem instead of going on and saying, how to, you could say how to write a loop in JavaScript, right? If you're in the coding interview and you've got to look up these basic commands, they might not fail you, but they're not going to work in your favor. And so there is a component to this that is rote memorization. Um, but additionally, there is a component to this that is knowing how the computer works on the silicon level, on the hardware level. How does um, how does a variable get allocated in the system? Um, how are there different ways to allocate a variable that alter the speed of the code that you're about to write? So remember, in terms of big technology, or any technology in general, but in terms of big technology, um, if we're Amazon and we have a customer base of 1 billion people, and we write something that reduces the amount of time for something to happen by a single millisecond, well, that's a billion milliseconds saved, which is uh, it's just a lot. I'm not going to do the math. You do the math. But it's it's like, in order to become I think part of in order to become what they refer to as a 10x engineer is you have to start thinking about the code that you write in terms of global scale. How do we scale to every single human on the planet? And um, obviously, there are times when you make a pragmatic choice between, I'm going to write this algorithm on the lowest possible memory footprint and the fastest possible time complexity. Um, and other times you say, well, I've got 20 minutes to get it done and I don't care. And it's never going to be a list of more than 5 elements. So it doesn't matter. And so it doesn't matter if you are entirely inefficient in the loop because you're making a pragmatic choice. But that's not the point. The point is that you know what choice you're making and what the implications of the choice that you're making are. So back to this. For each is actually quite a bit slower. JavaScript for each benchmark. For versus for each benchmark. So for each run tests. Let's see. Does this just work? You just click and you see it? This is exciting. So you can, oh wait, that doesn't seem to be working in the way that I remember it worked. So there you go. Once again, if I was in the interview, I would have failed if I was saying that 4 is the, wait. Anyways, so um so the specifics of the types of loops that you work on is very important. Like, just knowing how things work on the system level is very important. And that's another reason you want to go back to choosing your first language, the language that you run your test in early, so you don't have so that you can do a deep dive in the way that it works. So, um, pricing yourself, there were some things that were that's what it looked like to me over here, wasn't it? Like if I'm getting 16,000 operations per second versus 8,700, then it seems like for each is faster. But that's the exact opposite of what I had previously read. And so, but I just ran it in the browser. So what's going on? I get, you know, so like it, so it builds an array of 1,000 items, and then it runs the multiplication function on every element in the array, and it clearly looks to be the case that uh, for each is faster. So good to know. Good to know. For each for of. What about this one? This one. Jump to the latest result. Run the tests. Well, man, my computer's about to take off. How I, the only thing that I can think of is that it was slower, and browser developers said, well, we can improve on. I think, it must have been the case a couple of years ago that it was much slower, and somebody said, well, why don't I just optimize it? And maybe they fixed it. Sum. I don't know. Let's look at what is this sum thing? Array.sum. Does that even does that even make sense? Is this a new function? Did anybody know what that is? Can I use sum? Array.sum. Anyways, this is I mean, I guess it's been around a long time. I've never seen that function. Huh. Anyways, okay. Interesting story. Um, and so if I go into the right, um, so now where was here? So homework. Let's talk about homework because we are partway through. Um, I think we've talked about researching languages in production, um, and building an intersection of those lists over time. And there is a place to put that information. Um, I think when we're talking about the mechanics of the memory, I'm probably just going to stick with C sharp. Um, so I think that's good. But maybe if everybody else is doing JavaScript, I'll come play there as well. But we'll see. Um, so I started some research on memory management. Um, oh, my link is bad. It's probably right here. That's better. Um, so, and this stuff is really complicated. So it's like just look at I mean, like the size of this article, and there's all of these graphs, and you have to understand things. So what I don't know is if there is one for JavaScript memory man. Oh, well, maybe memory management in JavaScript. How JavaScript? Well, there you go. So there are articles on memory allocation, and what you're gonna figure out from that is when you assign var, when you create a new var, when you create a new let, when you create a new const, what does that do to the performance of the code that you write? I think one of the things that if you pay attention to um, Douglas Crockford is a guy who wrote a book, I think, called like JavaScript, the Good Bits or something. And he tells the story of, or he presents the position that you should not create top level variables right on window, but you should create an object at the top window and attach things to that, because if you pollute the top level of window, it apparently, I believe, slows things down. Um, so one of the things I can do since I'm here, I can actually copy some of this stuff across, at least to here. Memory management. Let's put it into this one, memory management, and see, do this. Mm, oh my God, my fingers are the worst. JavaScript. How to handle common memory leaks. And this is part of the really interesting part where we say even just doing the course and not going for the interview can make you a better developer overall, because I don't I don't know how to not have a JavaScript memory leak right now, but if I read this, I probably would have a better idea, and that would be good. So maybe I will read that. So save changes. Um, and Douglas Crockford was a JavaScript, the good parts video. He does a really great good parts, the better parts. Well, maybe it's better to just watch one from, oh. Well, I, I didn't know that JavaScript had memory leaks. So here I am. Uh, I mean, obviously there are times when JavaScript doesn't perform. I didn't realize that it was um, potentially a memory leak thing. So don't know. I have a spot where I put so reading and research. Language reference. But Douglas Crockford is a very good place to start with JavaScript. Very good JavaScript starting point. So there we go. We've now got that. And so back to homework. Um, right. And so there are some other things. It's not I mean, this is all on your own time anyways. So it's just, well, while you are thinking about what you are, the series. Oh, okay. I don't know what that is, but is that something that we should I send a pull request? We'll put it into something somewhere. Um, if it's good, then that's worth it. So here was another thing that I thought, actually, this one is really important. And it's important if you are planning on targeting one of these. I've was so much as started acting weird and showing wrong memory pointers, could not figure out what was causing it. Only interesting. So that's, yeah, it has happened. Um, no, no, that does not sound fun. Oh my gosh, that would be a nightmare, especially because when you're debugging stuff at the JavaScript stage, you're like, you know, or at the cross browser stage, yeah, you're just so close to the end of the budget that you're done, ran out of, and the project stopped. works works on some browsers. That's good. Um, so the company values are, um, like if you look up Amazon leadership principles, Amazon leadership principles, Amazon jobs. One of the things to note that was from that video was, he says each of these big companies that have one of these high level, um, one of these high level code interview testing processes will tell you every single thing that they're looking for, and all you have to do is do the work. So if you show up, and that's why I'm saying learn your learn your company values before you go, because somebody in the interview is going to ask you questions about your leadership principles and leadership behaviors, or they will ask you questions that are leading to try and say, can you tell me about a time where you invented and simplified something, or things like that, right? And so if you want to start thinking about going through one of these high effort interviews, it would be a really good idea to start right away coming up with examples and stories for each of the times that you have done so. Tell me about a time that you dove deep on something. And then you say, oh, well, there was this one time that I, you know, went and I read about memory management in JavaScript or something, right? Like it's, uh, I did a 14-week structured study course about uh, how to pass this interview, and I did all of the work. And you go into what you can do is you can go into examples of these leadership principles. Um, Team Blind I found to be really quite toxic. It's very um, tech bro type, and like, yeah, there's some really, really crap people on crap. They're crap attitudes. I'm sure they're fine people, but their attitudes are kind of shitty in here. But the interesting thing about this website is like right there. You fucking asshole, shut up. Okay, pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's um so one of the things, if you look through this stuff, this is another place where there are people who are talking about what it's like to um there was one that I saw that was like, if I would do Facebook POS. I think POS is POS is like their performance management system. Let me try Facebook culture. But these are this so the website itself is completely anonymous, and Facebook worst culture or pip rate. And this is um and so this is people anonymously posting, potentially quite disgruntled with the employment that they're doing. Otherwise, why else would they be going on and bitching onto a website? So you really have to, and username SV, Silicon Valley sucks. Um, so you do have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's like, uh, and they post their total compensate. I'm making 360,000. I'm an E5. Um, and they're just saying, if you read this, they're saying, I hate this. I hate it here. I'm in golden handcuffs. And uh, I think if you can get around the hip culture at Facebook, it's just a very high pressure sounding. If you read the people talking about it on this site, um, I think you get insights from people who are not afraid of getting fired because they are actually employed at the company, or they are actually verified employed, but they're anonymous. And so uh, that's optional. And if you're interested in just getting an idea of what it's like, it's a fun read. But if you um, if you're actually looking at one of these companies, it's really way more important to get that, because I've I thought Facebook would be an amazing job for a long time. And if you read the stuff that they're talking about the culture that they have there, you think, oh, that doesn't sound as fun as maybe I used to think. So um and then I think we're closing in on a good time to wrap up anyways, but I would so front end happy hour and close tabs to the right. We're done with everything else. Front end happy hour and soft skills engineering are both really good podcasts. So you sort of pop it in, and I always listen to my podcasts on 2 times speed, but you can do what you want. This guy's been going for hundreds of episodes, quitting a job. And in this one, they have a whole bunch of people, and they talk about what it's like quitting a job. And Ryan is actually a senior engineering manager at Netflix, and so um, he's and he's been there for 6 years. So he's a very high achieving individual, and I don't know who each of these other people are, but I assume they are all colleagues at Netflix. Front end. Oh, nope. Front end engineer at Twitch. Senior software at Netflix, Atlassian. So this is even more robust than I thought it was. So I guess uh, they go down to a bar and they have their podcast chat. Um, and so this one's really good in terms of talking about what it's like working in tech and making tech like decisions. And then I just discovered this one last night. First of all, how cute is this logo? Very important to acknowledge that. Um, but this one is also just, it was so good. They talk about, again, pay raises, quitting your job, hiring and firing developers, technical leaderships. Um, I popped in my AirPods last night and went to bed listening to this. I sort of flipped it around and started from episode one, and like I woke up, I I think I think I fell asleep through episode six. I'll probably re-listen to episode five, but these guys are funny and they are and they talk about thing and they're senior developers. They've both been in at at the start of episode one, they had both been in for 10 years and they've been doing this since 2016. So it's, these they are experts in their field. They are funny and relatable and kind sounding, at least. I mean, and I think a nice thing that I like about these professional development podcasts on the soft skills is you can get better at being a professional engineer through osmosis because it's just you sit and you listen to these two yabos chat back and forth and doop doop doop, I'm so funny, and then I'm so funny, doop doop doop, and they are really funny. It's really good. Um, so and they're only like 20 minutes apiece, so that's a I would recommend. I recommend both of these, and of course I included my own in there. However, uh, these ones have been running for multiple years. This one is just like brand new, and so let's pay attention to the difference in quality. It's coming later. Um, so there we go. Start planning for behavior. Yes, this is one of the things that I was talking about is if you are targeting a place in particular, or even if you're not, it probably makes sense to start thinking about non-technical questions now because I think they take longer to come up with and start practicing answering these types of long technical questions or sorry, non-technical questions. And what's really nice about listening to podcasts about soft skills, which is everything that isn't technical regarding engineering, this is where you can have those sorts of things, negotiating offers and dealing with an oblivious boss, making friends at work and how to be good at being managed. Like, uh, I don't know what that is, but web developer prejudice and legacy code. Um, like these wind up being really interesting and universally applicable to management snobs and to boss. See, like it was so much fun. This was so much fun, and I'm gonna keep listening to this one over time. So I think I'm about ready to wrap up unless there is anything else. Are there discussion topics that we want to bring forward? We coming back? I'm probably going to be doing the algorithm problems over the week, but I probably won't be streaming them at first. But maybe I thought it would be fun to do. Oh, do we fork your repo and independently do the work? Yeah, you are perfectly welcome to. It's released under MIT, so there's like no um, licensing issues that you have to work about. Um, if you are doing things where we're saying submit further information for the group to share, it makes more sense to put it back into the central repository. Um, I don't know that anything is actually I don't think there's anything this week that's anything other than information gathering. I think one of the things that would be useful for your purposes, if you are starting to do hacker rank or um, if you're doing hacker rank or leet code, one of the things that I did for this, in fact, this repo started exclusively as a place to just stash my code packages from the the tests. And so like I say, oh, you can find this problem here. This is the problem statement. Um, and then what I wind up having here is I've got all of the code for my final problem statement sitting in a place that I can point to a recruiter slash hiring manager who's deciding whether or not to call me into their office, right? One of the things that we know is there are two stages. Stage one is, in fact, let's go back to coding interview dot com. So I go here, click there, I go here. If we look, for example, at a guide for getting hired at Netflix, the first thing that happens if you want to work at Netflix or any of these places, and it's like this across all hiring interviews, they do not, the recruiters don't disturb the hiring manager unless they think they've got a hot lead. The recruiters generally are not highly technical people. They know enough to listen to you speak and know enough to know whether you are, they know enough to fake it, to fake the amount of technical knowledge that they have. So you get this phone call, it's 15 minutes to a half an hour, and they say, and they have this list of keywords, right? They have the list can work with Angular, can work with JavaScript, can work with blah. And they say, can you tell me about the time that you worked with blah? And you have to come up with that. But one of the things that I've been able to do myself over this time is over this research is I say, oh, look at my GitHub. I've got this to show you. I've got this to show you. This is relevant. This is relevant. And one of the things you could do if if you keep the code from each of your, let's go back, each of your challenges, you can say, you know what? I know we're going to have a technical interview at some point in the future, but tell the hiring manager that they are free and clear to go look at this GitHub repo where I have, hopefully by the end of it, 100 plus samples of quick algorithms that you've solved. Um, so you've got this 100 samples of your work solving various algorithms, and they can randomly pick one or two, and you could maybe organize it a bit, and they could go, okay, this person I understand, yeah, bring them in. They know code. They know enough code that I think that I'm willing to talk to them. And that's how you get your foot in the door for the first part. And so that's a long way of saying that even if you don't fork my repo, and in fact, I would probably, I don't know if I would recommend forking this one or starting your own. Like, is it a problem to say, I worked through a course with a group of people? I think that shows that you're motivated anyways. And I don't think that they're worried that you didn't invent the entire. In fact, I think they might think you were smart to just work through somebody else's with in a group. So, sure, fork the repo, write, or at least don't necessarily write your code in it, but preserve your code in it as a portfolio item, so that when it comes round to the time that you are looking for someone, you say, "Oh, this is my code." You know, you can see the stuff that I've done, and I think that gets you through this step, right? That's the step. That's the first one. You get to these ones, all of these ones, right? So there's the story. So week 0, um, done. Next week is data structure, system design. Where is the interview roadmap? Next week, week 1, we will be discussing programming language basics. I wonder if that's a full session. Anyways, we'll find out. I have to, I'm actually, as I say, I'm actually writing the course from this guide as as we go. So I have to figure out over the next week what we are going to talk about in relation to this. This was, I enjoyed this. I hope everybody else had an okay time. I think we got something.